inventory tests. And I said okay, because I didn't have anything to hide. So I took that test, and that one was normal too. And, you know, there were some scales or sides of it that were higher or lower than other sides, but it was normal. So then he didn't seem very happy, and then he's taking my testimony, or my, he's listening to my description of things that had happened, or taking some of my personal history, I guess. And I told him what I thought was a funny incident of how one time, he said, what's the most bizarre thing you've ever done? And I said, I don't know. I said, one time I accidentally wore a nightgown to church, because I thought it was like an Eddie Bauer flannel kind of dress that way back when, at that time, there were sort of outdoorsy things that were in style then. I mean, it was kind of grunge era. People were wearing hiking boots with plaid and lots of flannel. So I thought that's what it was. And then I had a couple people come up to me in church and say, is that a nightgown? And I said no. And then I got home and I got sort of curious, and I looked at the label, and the label said something like sleepy time or bedwear, or something that indicated it was a nightgown. And I was mortified, because I thought I just wore, I mean, it was modest. It had full sleeves and went all the way to the ground, but I was mortified that I had actually worn a nightgown to church. But it was a mistake anyone could have made. And I got it at a thrift store, so it was in the dress section. It wasn't in the sleepwear section. It was hanging up in a thrift store in the dresses section, and I looked at it and thought that it was a dress too. So I wasn't the only one. I mean, somebody put it there. And I told him this, and I was kind of laughing, and I thought, well, this is a funny story. It was bizarre, and there was nothing truly bizarre, like, about my doing that, but it was bizarre to me. I mean, I didn't understand what he meant by bizarre, as in, did you ever flip a screw type of a thing. I just thought he meant bizarre, like, the most embarrassing thing you've ever done or something. So I told him this story, and then I decided, after a couple sessions, I thought, he's sort of angling against me. Like, for some reason, he seemed to want to work against me, even though I had everything working for me in all the objective tests and with what I told him. So I thought, I don't know, I started getting a weird feeling like he had talked to somebody who wanted him to go in a certain direction. So I said, well, I think I'm done with this for now. And I asked for copies of my records, and I read them at the time. And when I read what he had written and how he had relayed my information, that's when I knew, yeah, it was a good time for me to get out of counseling with him, because he had described my funny story as under the heading, most bizarre behavior. Client describes having worn a negligee or nightgown to church. He said it he made it sound like it was a negligee, or some kind of, like, some flimsy nightie. Maybe he said nightie. I mean, I don't know. I just remember when I read that, it did sound bizarre. It sounded like I was a nutcase who got out of bed one morning in her underwear and bra, or, you know, her teddy or something, and decided to go to church like that. I mean, yeah, I would say that that's bizarre, and I would say that that woman probably needs to be checked out very closely. Glenn Closely. So that's how I knew that my instincts had been correct, and it was good for me to get out when I did. But everything else was normal. So then, after doing that to demonstrate, you know, there wasn't anything wrong with me, people kind of quit. I don't know how many people looked at those records, but people quit calling me nuts for a long time. And then I was in court and filing my lawsuits and going to college, and people really didn't bring it up again. The only time they brought it up again is after I was raped repeatedly. I mean, several more times, beginning in about 2002 or 2004. I think it was, well, it was 1999. It was Robin. And then there was nothing until maybe 2004, 2003, 2004, something like that. And then it was just this series of all the same things, and in the same way that the previous rapes had been done. And at that point, I was suddenly being called crazy again. So people really backed off, and they quit. And then this article came out about me, and I would try to report the first rape to the police, and then all of a sudden people really wanted me to be crazy. And so that's what was being said. And so then I was in Washington State then, because I was doing that commute. And I went to one counselor and asked him if he wanted to evaluate me. And he said that everything was fine. I mean, he said that it didn't sound like that there was nothing going on. I went to someone one time after my uncle restrained me, and it really was upsetting. I went to a free place, and I had one session with him one time. And then aside from that, I didn't see anybody until I was at this clinic for Columbia Community Health. And when I was there seeing Dr. Butler, even though he did treat my migraines, and he said, oh, don't worry about this marijuana thing, I did notice that he tried a couple of other things first before the narcotics, and it was things that were used as antipsychotics, like antihistamines and antipsychotic type stuff. And I said, and I told him I was willing to try it. I tried Imitrex and all these other things, so since he asked me to try the other ones, even though I looked at their side profile and saw what they were used for, I did try it. I thought, well, possibly if he says it's quote-unquote off-label for migraines, then I guess I will. But the other person that he then wanted me to see at the same time, about that time, was a psychologist named Julie. And Julie was the only psychologist, I believe, for Columbia Valley Community Health. And I found out that after I saw her one time, she wrote up all these nasty things about me. I mean, she didn't administer any kind of tests at all or anything. I saw her for a half an hour. I hardly talked about anything. And after sitting with, being with her for a half hour and noticing she didn't like me, I later discovered in some notes that she then called a woman named Barbara, and Barbara was the supervisor for Donna Titleman and Tina Thornton, my social worker. So that was supposed to be confidential counseling, and Julie decided to call up a social services woman in Spokane who was Catholic, as I said, and she was the one who supposedly didn't want me to get paid my money, reimburse my money for my driving expenses. I don't know, maybe it came from Donna Titleman, but supposedly it went all the way back to her, because supposedly Spokane was the group to issue that check and to approve that. And the woman who was overseeing everything was very strong Catholic, really didn't like me. And then I find out Julie is calling Barbara, and they're talking about me. And she documented that in her own notes, Julie did. And what she wrote in her notes about me was she had never met me, she didn't know any of my history, she just talked to me for half an hour, and all of a sudden she's writing me up and talking to another woman about me as being quote-unquote borderline. And something else, I can't remember, maybe she said bipolar as well, which I wasn't. But the main thrust that she was taking was borderline. And I knew exactly why she chose borderline. And it was a favorite of federal people that she was connected to. Because The borderline personality disorder is one that cannot accept rejection, i.e., woman begins relationship with man, becomes obsessed with man or boyfriend, and has this deep need for approval and unrealistic expectations. When man dumps her, or boyfriend dumps her, she reacts in an extreme way, responding in atypical fashion to the withdrawal of attention from this person that she is obsessed with. I.e., fatal attraction, Glenn Close. Can't accept rejection. Right, because that's exactly what all of these rapists that are connected to the federal government, that's what they wanted to say about me. Oh, she just reported me because I rejected her. Oh, she just has unrealistic expectations and she doesn't understand whether a man is really interested in her or not. She exaggerates the interest level, and then she can't handle it when they don't show interest, which is exactly what the FBI wanted, didn't they? Because that's exactly how they portrayed me in their FBI report for Raul and Armando. So borderline was going to work out very well for anybody who'd ever sexually abused me, assaulted me, or raped me. And it's very, very specific to an excellent excuse of, trying to cover something to use as to why a woman might be reporting something, or even a man might be reporting something, and trying to create a motive or agenda with that victim. Oh, she wasn't really abused. She just has borderline syndrome. He wasn't really abused. He's just borderline. He has a lot of issues with that. So people use that. I discovered that people use all kinds of horrific, mental illness is one of the best defenses and weapons that people still use in America today, and they use it in to a criminal level. So that is what Julie wrote about me, and what she breached the confidentiality agreement with in having a discussion about me to Barbara over in Spokane. So that was all happening after I was coming back, kind of right on the heels of, here I am trying to get FOIA from the FBI. I'm still embroiled in all of that. So she made that suggestion. She didn't diagnose me, because there's no way she could diagnose me in a half an hour. But she made a lot of suggestive remarks about that, which any kind of suggestion in a document to that effect is going to be harmful to somebody if it's not true. So that's what she did. And that also went along with Greg Smith's idea of the bunny boiler, woman who cannot take no for an answer. So I think that it most especially typifies what the FBI was doing and how they wrote up my report. Because if you will compare and contrast what I was talking about when I was reading from the report, just from